Welcome, everyone, to this EU Clusters talk on support programs and funding schemes. How do they strengthen innovation ecosystems? How do they boost support for SMEs, for R&D, for upskilling, for collaboration? I think the key word today is collaboration because we want to have a dialogue among the different national clusters, how we can compare notes, learn from each other. This is the latest Clusters talk organized by the European Cluster Collaboration Platform, ECCP. And there are encompassing 1,500 organizations. And this is on behalf of DG Grow at the European Commission. And this particular event, my name is Chris Burns, and I'm going to be also co-moderating the conference in May on the clusters in Brussels. And this is kind of a teaser for that, to talk about comparing notes and how we can make it work even better. So the agenda today is we start with the cluster's news and information from the European Commission to give us some detail about this kind of collaboration we're talking about. And they will be very closely listening, Mariella and Jan-Philipp as well as other members of the Commission. They're listening in. So we want to compare notes and have them hear that feedback as well. Then we go to Slido questions. We want to tap your brains after you hear about that. And then go to the panel discussion from the different clusters around Europe. And we want to have you involved in this question and answer period. And you can put those questions into the chat. Then we'll have funding opportunities after that. So let's go to some couple of tech tips. Yes, the Slido questions, be ready for that, for the polls. Also the Zoom Q&A function, you can tap that and put in your questions. Also, the chat is good to keep an eye on because there's a lot of good dialogue there and information linked to what we're talking about. And you can also click on raising your hand if you want to pose a question directly on camera. We can do that as well. This will be recorded for playback, and the slides from the presentations will also be available. So why don't we go to news from the European Cluster Collaboration Platform, ECCP, with Nina Hoppmann, team member of ECCP. Nina.
Good morning, Chris, and good morning, everybody. Happy to see you here this morning in this EU Clusters talk. As Chris already teased, the European Cluster Conference is not that far away. It will take place on the 7th and 8th of May. So please do make sure that you register via the link that you see in the screen and have in the chat for the conference that will take place in the square in Brussels. And we're going to talk about the role of clusters in advancing EU industry policies, looking at the green transition, digital transition, and building resilience, and the key drivers for that, like skills, funding, and technology.
And a great place to have it. The square is really, really cool, the architecture of it. And as well, you're smack in the middle, right near the train station and near the Grand Place and Mankenpiss and chocolate shops. You're close to everything. It's great you can step out for a break and do your shopping too.
And you can come to the matchmaking as well, which will be part of the conference. It will take place on the 8th of May during 4 hours, also at the Square Building, different room at the conference venue. And matchmaking can offer you potential business partners for different stages of the supply chain. So keep an eye out also for the information on matchmaking. We'd also like you to save the date for the next Clusters Meet Regions event, which will take place in Milan in Italy. So we are going to discover the Lombardy region and to discuss the twin transition, analyze how the policy is effective from central level strategies to the implementation at the local level, look at best practices and models, both by the Italian and European regions, looking at support initiative for business and of course the possibility to network and to build projects among participants. So this will be on the 26th and 27th of March. Make sure to check out the ECCP Trend Universe. This is a strategic foresight instrument so that you can get a deeper understanding of future trends and impacts on your cluster organization. You can find that on the ECCP in our services, or you can also scan the QR that is here. And why I mention this is because now during February, there's a trial period with access of all ECCP users to the Trend universe. Usually it's just for pro users, but everybody can access during February, check it out. And there are new features on there as well. So when you have a few minutes, maybe after the talk, go check it out and to have a look at the Trend universe. We would also like to invite you to the Advanced Manufacturing Industry Conference, which will take place on the 16th of April. The registration is open until the end of March, and the conference will bring together policymakers, industry leaders, academia, and institutional representatives to discuss specific challenges facing advanced manufacturing. And the conference will have dedicated panels on advanced processes to accelerate towards net zero, utilize the potential of data in manufacturing, as well as the onboarding of new AI and robotics technologies. It's also taking place in Brussels, as I said, 16th April, to register until the end of March if you're interested. And last but not least, maybe you've already seen it, the 2024 Annual Single Market and Competitiveness Report is available, and this report details competitive strengths and challenges of the EU single market, looking at different competitive drivers, the functioning of the single market, access to private capital, public investment in infrastructure, research and innovation, and so on. And you can read the report clicking on the link in the chat or that you see here on the screen, and will be very interesting to read. Will be interesting to see the analysis. And with that, I hand over back to you so that we can get into the topic of our day.
Okay, great. Nina, thanks. And we'll talk to you later about the funding opportunities. Yeah, let's go to Mariella Masselink, head of unit at DG GROW, European Commission. You're going to open this discussion, give us a quick idea of what we're going to be talking about, because I know you can't stay with us very long. Your colleague Jan-Philipp Kramer will pick up the relay after that. But let's hear from you on what this is all about, the clusters and how they work.
Yeah, many thanks. Hello, and it's really good to see so many colleagues online for the discussion today, because indeed the aim is that we discuss cluster policies in the EU, support programs and funding schemes. That's the topic of the day. But much as you said, Chris, we really want to make this an interactive dialogue, because we
Yes.
want to hear from the practitioners on the ground who actually live and implement the cluster policies, how that works and what we can learn from each other, of course. But maybe just a few words from my side to set the scene and give you a bit of background on why we thought it's a good moment in time to have this seminar, this exchange today. So maybe as you might be aware that a large number of EU member states have actually a long tradition of really dedicated cluster policies. We estimate that more than 50% have more than 10 years of experience in implementing cluster-specific policies, either at national, regional, or at both levels. At the same time, the cluster policy landscape we see is very diverse. So, for example, there are member states who really have overarching national cluster policies and strategies. Sometimes they are more developed and financed at the regional level. And sometimes we also see that there is no specific cluster policy in place. So, indeed, a very diverse picture that we see. And usually, irrespective of what the format, so to say, of the cluster policy is, the aims of these cluster policies are very similar. On the one hand, it is about strengthening innovation ecosystems, also increasing the link between research and industry, supporting SMEs in particular in the green and digital transition, but also to boost internationalization and also the upskilling of the workforce. So those are a bit the main goals that we see usually in cluster policies. And in terms of the tools they use, so the form in which these cluster policies are implemented, they usually take the form of financial, but also technical support. And our aim today is that we want to discuss with you what type of different cluster policies exist in the EU, and also how we can learn from each other and also how we can best support them. So that would be our aim. And indeed, you have already said we have with us Jean-Philippe Kramer, who is partner at Prognos and also a team member of our ECCP consortium. You all know him. And he will give a presentation where on the one hand, he will introduce what we call the cluster policy mapping methodology. So how they have mapped out the cluster policies throughout Europe, but also present some initial results already on these cluster policies in the EU. And they will soon also be published on the websites under the cluster policy fact sheets, as you know. And for us, we think these fact sheets, they are really a great tool to, on the one hand, understand better the structure of industrial ecosystems and how the clusters are embedded to them, but also to really deep dive on national and regional cluster policies. And our main aim, and that's also why it is so topical to discuss this now, is that we for the first time want to really feed these results into the European semester process. You might be aware that the European semester is the EU's framework for coordination and surveillance of economic policies in the member states. It comprises country reports and country-specific recommendations that help countries advance in their economic development and structural reforms. And we think that the findings that we have on the cluster side, how clusters can also support this economic development, is a great asset for the European semester process. So really timely that we have this exchange today. Now, from my side, I will close it here. I would like to also then hand over to Jan-Philippe, ask you all to really be active in the participation and let us know what your experiences are and share your insights. Many thanks.
Thank you, Mariella. Yeah, Jan-Philippe, go ahead. It's interesting already in the Q&A we see from Christian Bulk, what is the program for today, since I am particularly interested in information about funding schemes. So that's very much a part of what we're going to be talking about, isn't it, Jan?
Yes, indeed. And good morning, everybody. It's a great pleasure to be here with so many people from across the EU and beyond even. And as Mariella nicely set the scene, I'm looking forward to present to you some initial insights from our cluster policy mapping. We have updated the fact sheets for 2023, and I will give you first overviews of what we have found. And as has been indicated, indeed, we will be further analyzing this and publishing a report towards the European Cluster Conference in May. So let's dive right in. We have been working on these fact sheets for a couple of years now. It's the next edition, which is under preparation now. We have made continuous refinements in that process because we want to really get the best out of this mapping for all of you. And it's quite comprehensive, I must say. So we have been updating 56 cluster policy fact sheets, of course, from the EU member states, but also beyond. So we have a quite large body of information that can serve as a basis of policy discussions and also comparisons, of course. For the new fact sheets, we have been looking into the funding from cohesion policy, so mostly from the ERDF. But as Mariella also said, we have also been looking into the country-specific recommendations from the European semester reports, which we believe can indeed start a discussion of how cluster and cluster policy can contribute to that. Just a few words on the process. This has been mostly done based on a desk research and a validation process, in particular in the EU member states, and we have great partnership and support also by the European Cluster Alliance in helping validate this information. And as I said, it's not only EU27, and I can already maybe announce that 2 fact sheets I would suggest you to read is on the US and Canada. I think that will be very interesting also for our discussions we will be having here in these rounds. And what do you get? So you get information on the policy context, on industrial ecosystems and the cluster landscape in the different countries, on national cluster policy programs and initiative, and a short assessment on the state of play. So just as a background, now let's look at the map of Europe. What is the state of play? Mariella correctly said cluster policy is not a new thing. And so it's not surprising that we do find quite a large number of policies that are directly or indirectly relating to cluster support. And indeed, we have identified around 50 policies across the EU. And I'm sure that's not the full number, even if you would dig down to the local level and regional level in all of the territories. This being said, we do see of the around 50 policies, we have 25 that we classify to be really distinct cluster policies. So that are really targeted at the development of clusters in the territory, be it on national level or on the regional level. And then we have something we call more broad or sectoral policies, which do have relationships to developing clusters or looking at concentrations of industries in order to develop them, but they're not yet at the level of this development in focusing on clusters more explicitly. When you look at the map, you see 4 categories, and I'm not going to talk through all of them in detail, but the main point is, of course, we do have countries which operate a cluster policy at the national level on a quite strategic approach. And you can see that France, for instance, is among them as a very large country, Portugal, but also Denmark, for instance. Then we have countries which have a mixed approach, right? So where you have a combination of national and regional policy approaches, which more or less complement each other. Germany is quite known for this approach, but we also see it in Poland, for instance, in Spain, in Italy. And then, as I said, there's a broad set of countries which operate a more broader set of policies. We do see that to cluster a little bit in terms of geography, not in terms of policy, in the Baltic states, and also in some of the Eastern European countries such as Hungary, Slovakia, Slovenia, for instance. So this is not a judgment. It just shows different stages of the evolution around cluster policy, and it gives us a bit of frame of where we have to look at.
Yeah, I wonder, Jan Philipp, I guess, with Germany, for instance, you've got the 16 Länder.
Indeed.
Maybe the clusters are more organized from that level, which doesn't mean that it's any less than a national, but it's just a different way of doing it, right?
Exactly. Well put. Well put, Chris. That's the message. It's not a judgment.
No.
National or regional is better or worse. Indeed.
Right.
All right. So when we go on, funding and financing cluster policy obviously is quite important, right? We have been looking into cluster support under cohesion policy programs in the 21-27 period. You know, it's a very central policy. It's quite hot debated at the moment. And with its 350 billion euros in EU contribution, it's also quite significant. And if you look at the role of clusters in that regard, you can see it in big letters on the screen here. Clusters have been a key pillar in cohesion policy to different degrees, obviously. We found that in 24 out of the 27 EU member states, clusters are explicitly mentioned in the cohesion policy programs. We're still looking into the quantity of support and also the level of relevance, if you want. But I think that already gives us a good signal that clusters are also used in order to implement the objectives of cohesion policy, which are multifaceted, but we know it's about innovative Europe, it's about greener Europe, and therefore also very important topics that we are debating. Now, I wanted to give you 3 different examples of these approaches, and they reflect also quite different approaches in how you can implement cluster policy and how that also is related to the cohesion policy funding. We have selected, if you want a bit of a balanced geography from a geography perspective, we have more and less developed territory, and also quite different approaches when it comes to the implementation. So in the Netherlands, we do have a national cluster policy that gives a frame. We have cohesion programs, of course, which the regional level are working on. And we do see that the cluster support on the regional level is relevant. You see the North Netherlands, for instance, with a focus on support and innovation to the benefit of SMEs, and they channel that through clusters with quite some relevant budget allocation of around 20 million euros. Similar approach, slightly less budget though, in South Netherlands. And the East Netherlands also looking at supporting cluster activities as part of innovation and valorization. So getting research into the market, and also regarding economic sustainability. And I think that's also quite interesting approach if you consider that. Now in Croatia, the picture emerges that cluster support runs through cohesion programs exclusively. We have picked only one pillar of that with the integrated territorial program, which supports the development of clusters into streams in upgrading cluster organizations or building them, and also in supporting them regarding training and internationalization. So you can say this is mostly looking at the cluster organizations in order to increase capacity. And a different picture emerges when you look at Portugal. There you have a national OP, Compete 2030, which is directly linked also to the competitiveness clusters program and the smart specialization strategy. But then 6 out of 7 regional OPs also support clusters. So you have a quite integrated, if you want, approach and an aligned way to deliver cluster policy through cohesion policy programs in order to drive innovation, internationalization of SMEs, but also decarbonization and energy transition as part of the priority objective 2 of the cohesion policy.
It's interesting to see, Jan Philip, Croatia, which is a relative newbie to the EU, right? The last 10 years, and how bullish they appear to be on the clusters. We have a question from Pauline about the previous map that you just showed. Can we go back to that, Nina? What are the meaning of the colors on the map? Can you go back to that?
Yes, the colors show you the different.
I think it was the one after that.
Oh, okay. Sorry,
yeah.
I jumped upon over that. That's the different regional categories that cohesion policy funding is offering by the development stage of a region. So it's not so important for the cluster policy programs directly, but of course the less developed regions have higher funding allocations. You see those in red, for instance.
Okay, it's a matter of funding.
Yeah.
And one other thing to point out is in the chat, we have a lot of people putting in their LinkedIn links, and that's what we're going to be talking. We want to encourage people to liaise via that. There's a LinkedIn chat that we can tell you about later. Anyway, sorry, go ahead.
All right. Super. Then we go on and we look more into the question of the transitions. We talk a lot about directionality of support, maybe sometimes even directionality failures. In the past, we have talked a lot about market failures, innovation system failures. Now it's about aligning individual innovation activities with societal goals. And of course, the European Commission has focused quite a lot on important transition topics, the twin transition with digital and green, and of course, also resilience building as a key matter of ensuring that Europe and the European economy can deal with external shocks in a better way. And we have looked into the policies, and now I'm only speaking about the dedicated cluster policies and how far they are addressing these Commission priorities. And I must underline, this is a very initial analysis and picture. We do see that across the board, if you look at the different cluster policies, we see a high contribution. So 21 out of the 25 actually support the digital transition, 18 support the green transition, and 15 the resilience building. But you do also see that by differentiating EU 15 and EU 13, we do see a slight difference, which is also, of course, about the number of policies which are dedicated cluster policies. Don't take it as an absolute statement. So it's interesting. I think the message here is, yes, Commission priorities in terms of twin transition and resilience building are picked up, but we can still intensify this because there's a lot of things that cluster can contribute. And I will come to that in a minute. And the second element here on the slide is, how can cluster policies support the implementation of the European semester recommendations? And this has been mentioned by Mariella. This is very important. And we see these 5 different areas, at least, in which this can be happening. And we have been matching the recommendations from the European semester with the things that cluster policies say they are doing. Green transition, very clear. Clusters can support building circular industrial ecosystems. They can support efficiency, energy and resource efficiency along supply chains. So we need cluster policies to stimulate that. Digital transition, we see it's already been reflected, but we need to further facilitate digital adoption in SMEs. Clusters are very good in doing that. Resilience building, supply chain resilience has been a core topic since the pandemic, and it will continue to be in the geo-economic environment. So this is clear, but also reindustrialization is a topic, or resilient energy planning, which can be facilitated. Skills, very clear, clusters as intermediaries between firms and training institutions, for instance, but also for attracting talent, making places visible. And last but not least, the more classical one on the innovation system, to reduce barriers of transfer, to engage in collaborations between academia and business, but also for new things like venture clienting, to bring together startups and demand from bigger firms. So there's a number of things where we believe cluster policies can make contributions also to those things that the European semester recommendations entail. So moving to the observations on trends in cluster policies, as I said, it's initial. We will be talking a bit more on this in May at the conference on European clusters. But there are 4, let's say, emerging topics that we see. The first is clusters and cluster policies are used as some sort of institutional infrastructure to tackle grand challenges and organizing transition pathways. So this is increasingly coming through also in the policies. And I think this is very important also when talking about directionality of our policies overall. Then more explicit focus on reindustrialization, as I mentioned before. So I think this is also something that we see in this whole debate about security of supply, nearshoring, etc., and a different globalization in a way. International and European cluster cooperation is coming out more and more as an explicit goal in the national and regional cluster policies. And I very much encourage that, because building upon the European single market is a key strength. So we also need policies to support that. And last but not least, cluster support integrating with the smart specialization strategies. And of course, as I've shown within cohesion policy, is becoming more and more the norm. And I cannot talk about all examples. Now we picked France and Czechia just to illustrate how these trends are visible. So in France, we have a long tradition, you know that, with the pôle de compétitivité. We have a dedicated cluster policy for a long time, and we have different stages. While the last stage from 2019 to 21 was focusing on cluster cooperation and aligning that with regional development, now the focus is on grand challenges and the twin transition and also economic sovereignty. So that's the next stage there. In terms of the Czech case, it's a bit different in Czechia. So it's about still some classical elements of cluster support programs to enhance competitiveness of SMEs, but also looking at technological platforms that can help us focusing on transition and contribute to the transition pathways.
Yeah,
So let me,
we have to kind of speed it up a little bit. I'm sorry.
I'm
And I've
almost
been
done.
interjecting. I've been tripping you up, but anyway, my
Yes.
apologies.
I'm almost done.
Okay.
I'm concluding on the next slide with
All right.
3 main points. So initial observations, if you want. So we do see that cluster policy support is delivered through very different types of policies and programs. We do see that dedicated cluster policies are really present in the majority of EU countries, but the picture is not as straightforward. There's a mix of programs that can contribute to cluster development. And I think overall that's fine. The only question we need to ask each other is, do we get the maximum benefit then from clusters that we all believe in, I would say. And so the question is, how do you finance and how do different funding mechanisms relate to each other in order to bring a comprehensive but also coherent approach to cluster development? So that's the first observation. The second is cluster policy and smart specialization. I think this has been emerging since the upcoming discussions around smart specialization. At the beginning, people were thinking, oh, this is a rival product or a rival initiative. No, it's not. It's integrated, and we see this more and more to be happening. And the third one, and then I'm done, is using cluster policy as institution building for the critical transitions that we have. So I talked about already the grand challenges. So we're not only talking about innovation and competitiveness, but relating cluster policy to the grand challenges and using cluster organizations as an institutional infrastructure to implement the green and digital transition for the ecosystems we're talking about. So I try to wrap up, Chris, and I'm very much looking forward to the discussion to come. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Thank you, Jan. A quick question, OP, what's the acronym OP? Gwinnell asks.
Very good question. Operational program. Apologies for this
okay.
Terminology.
Great.
Yes, ERDF
okay.
operational programs.
Excellent. Okay, so how do we, thank you very much, Jan Philip Kamma. It's all about maximizing the impact, about the benefits. That's what we're talking about. How do we maximize this? We'd like to hear from you. Let's start with well, before we go to the panel debate, let's go to Slido and ask you a few questions. And if you could connect first, slido.com, #cluster policy. Very easy, or you've got the QR code there if you want to do that with your cell phones. And away we go. So how familiar are you with clusters in your region? Obviously, you're connecting out of more curiosity, but how familiar are you? Some more than others, as we can see in the chats and so forth. And it's great to have so many people connected today. It was really, really good to see that. And yeah, very okay. That's good to know. That's encouraging. Okay, let's move to the second question. Have you ever been involved in processes to define the cluster policy of your country or region? Okay. Okay, a few occasions. That's okay. That's what these cluster talks are about, is being involved in the discussion and the feedback on how to make it work even better. So okay, that's good to know. There is involvement there. There is input on the operation of the clusters and the formation of what they do, in making them more effective in R&D and skills, upskilling, and financial opportunities. Okay, that's fine. Let's move to the third one. And the third one is a word cloud. We'd like to get your input on what areas should be covered by a dedicated cluster policy. What kind of areas, either in terms of, I guess, in terms of sectors, or in terms of actually, what do you want to get out of a cluster? Yeah, skills is a big, big issue. There is a skills gap in many sectors, which I see and hear all the time in the European Parliament. How do we upskill people for the future? And this is how clusters can help with that. In our previous cluster talks, we've talked about the skills. Cross-cluster collaboration. Very interesting. Innovation, of course. Innovation. And because there are many programs through Horizon and so forth that contribute to that and that the clusters can tap into. Internationalization, right, because the clusters they don't just operate within the EU 27, they have connections outside of the EU as well in third countries. Women, very important, STEM, for instance. Good. A lot of ideas. That's what we want today. And with the Commission listening closely about what the needs are. We have a few more people typing in, so let's hang on for another second or so. We see the the larger the word, of course, the more people are writing that in. So funding, internationalization, innovation, skills, competitiveness, very, very key. And also the smaller ones are important. AI, SME support. What do we do with AI? How do we make it a tool for our benefit and as a tool for jobs as well? Yeah, healthcare, all kinds of sectors. And we got 3 more coming in. Good. Jan, you want to jump back in? Are you there? You want to comment on that at all?
Well, I think it kind of confirms what we have been seeing. Innovation remains at the center because innovation support, of course, can contribute to many of the challenges. I would only repeat, we need to ensure directionality. We need, of course, competitiveness, but there are many other important integrative objectives around the digital and green transition. And we need to ensure that through innovation, we achieve competitiveness and a contribution to these goals in order to also increase sustainability of our industry.
Yeah,
So
and
I
all
think,
the different sectors that are mentioned in there, I think there are clusters for all of them, aren't there? Including space applications, cybersecurity.
very sure there are. Of course,
Yeah.
it's also not a static landscape. There are new clusters formating, and therefore we do also see this coming.
Yeah. Okay. Great. 2 more top participants typing here. Okay, that's great. Thank you so much for all the input. That is great. Let us move on. Let's finally get to the panel debate. And here we have John Hobbs, Senior Lecturer, Munster Technological University. Let's start with John. I want to do kind of a lightning round first. Each of you telling us what you do very quickly, and then we'll come back to the Q&A. John, I see you're working across 7 countries on how to use clusters. Yeah, tell us about yourself and your cluster.
Thanks, Chris. Delighted to be here this morning. I suppose I'm a lecturer in the Munster Technological University in Ireland and been interested in clustering and competitiveness for a number of years. So I've been involved in a number of different EU projects with clusters, and at present I'm working on the Accelerate GDT project, which is an Interreg Europe funded project, and it brings together 7 different EU countries looking at cluster policies and how we can integrate digital and green transition supports into those policies more effectively through co-learning and cooperation.
Okay, excellent. Let's move to Monika Antonovic, expert in strategy and analysis department at the Polish Agency for Enterprise Development. Before we go to your slides, just tell us quickly what you do.
Yes, hello. Greetings from Poland. I'm an expert, a specialist in the field of cluster policy in Poland. I will explain it through the panel what we do. And I'm also involved in the smart specialization strategy in Poland. That's in short. Thank you.
Yeah, smart. I like that. The concept of smart specialization is working on a regional level. And I think it's that's very important, and how clusters also contributed to that.
They
Pauline,
contribute a lot.
yes, absolutely. Pauline Capus, General Manager, French Association of Competitiveness Clusters, AFPC.
Hello.
You're also representative. Pardon, excusez-moi. Did I
Sorry.
get that right?
Hello. So good morning, everybody. So I'm Pauline
Bonjour.
Capu. I'm the General Manager of AFPC, which is the French National Network for Pôle de Compétitivité. So I will tell you more about Pôle de Compétitivité during the panel session.
Okay, great. You're also representative of the Caffeine Project.
Exactly.
Spain, Sweden, and other countries. Why do you call yourself Caffeine? Is that
So
any indication?
Caffeine is a European project coordinated by AFPC, and we are working with 4 other national cluster associations to build together a joint action plan. So it will be also the opportunity to share some information regarding this project.
Okay, très bien. Merci beaucoup, Pauline. We'll come back to you. And Ty Friis Egefjord, Team Leader, Innovation and Clusters, Danish Business Authority. We saw how Denmark is very much involved in clusters. Tell us about yourself, Ty.
Yes, thank you and good morning. I'm a team leader at the Danish Business Authority, which is the managing authority of regional funds in Denmark. And we have been in charge of cluster policy since 2018. So for about 6 years, we've been working towards transforming the Danish cluster landscape from more than 60 local and regional cluster organizations to less than 20. I'll be happy to share experiences on that.
Okay,
and also
excellent.
to consolidate our smart specialization approach from a very regional approach to a more national approach.
Okay, very good. Yeah, let's go back to John. And can you tell us about how you coach people how to use the clusters, right? That's basically it, if I'm not mistaken.
I guess it's a collaborative project where we're looking to understand the cluster policies across our 7 different regions. And then we co-learn together to see, can we integrate different supports or good practices that are running in different regions across Europe and share them across our partner regions. So how do we, I suppose, help our cluster policies to be more effective and more focused now on the twin transition? So for example, I suppose in terms of the cluster supports in our countries that we have participating. So in Ireland, there's a national cluster program being developed at present, and we're connected to the Department of Enterprise, Trade and Employment in Ireland as an associate partner on the project. In Catalonia, we have Axio, who are very strong in clustering and have 30 years of cluster experience and running, I suppose, one of the longest programs, I guess, across Europe and internationally. They do a whole pile, I suppose, on cluster training and managing and collaborating, and run a 3-year program where clusters apply to be part of that particular program every 3 years, and then they start again and reset, and it's a reapplication process. In Italy, in the Piedmont region, we have the city of Turin, or the metropolitan city of Turin, and they use ERDF funding mechanisms to support 7 large regional clusters.
What ERDF? Sorry, ERDF was
European Regional Development Fund.
Okay,
so they use European regional development funding to support 7 large clusters in their region. In Austria, we have AWS, which is an investment agency, and they, I suppose, are connecting in the different clusters that operate at regional levels there. Some of those would use the RDF funding, some would use regional innovation funding, and they have a blend of different programs in Austria, which is very, very interesting. We also have Hungary as part of our project, and the Ministry of Public Administration and Regional Development. They've just launched their new centralized national level program for cluster development. In Czech Republic, we have Czech Invest, and they have a cooperation clusters program. A lot of the supports, as Jean-Philippe was saying, are focused, I suppose, more on SME competitiveness rather than a dedicated regional cluster program, but that's what they're trying to develop as part of the project. And then we have the Duisburg Business and Innovation Organization, who are supporting regional programs and looking at spinning up new clusters, I suppose, in the green transition area.
So between those clusters, how can they maybe crossbreed? And we're talking about how one can learn from another. How can you give us an example of that?
I suppose
what you do?
in terms of what we have, or we have the public agencies that are developing and managing those cluster programs. So we have opportunities then through Interreg Europe and the programs that they run. We have the ability to meet together every 6-month semester of the project, and we bring together, I suppose, both the organizations that are involved in the project and then local stakeholders. So we get the opportunity to bring with us some of the clusters that are addressing the topics that we have in our webinars, in our workshops, in our seminars, etc. They get to meet face to face, present good practices from their regions, and then we can co-learn from each other. We also share all of those good practices, I guess, on the policy learning platform of Interreg Europe as well. So that makes them available to further afield, people inside and outside Europe then who wish to connect with those good practices.
Can you give a concrete example of that? What best practice or?
Yeah, I guess we have we've shared different things on digital discovery initiatives. We've shared different elements on investment opportunities for clusters and various different programs. And I can pop the link for our website into the chat so that everyone can click through to those concrete examples.
Yeah, please do. Please do. Okay, great. Stay with us. Let's go to Monika Antonowicz in Poland. You got a couple of slides to show, I guess, to illustrate what you're talking about on how cluster support works in your country.
Yes, please show me the slides here. I wanted to show you that in Poland we have some kind of continuity in the policy. It's not perfect, of course, but since 2004 we are trying to see clusters, support clusters, and cooperate with them. As you can see, it's divided on financial perspectives because support is connected to European Union funds, and I don't want to tell you about everything. You can see the slide even after during the recording, in recording. But what is from my perspective important is that we started with very interesting project, which is tactics. I forgot to mention it. Sorry, that's the mistake from my part. In 2012, we finished this project. It was project about developing the cluster policy, what cluster can do, how to help them, what they are good in, what kind of fields are the best parts for the economy. And we learned a lot during this project. So we prepared some schemes, and then in 2015 we started to have national key clusters competitions. I will explain it a little bit more later. And we since 2012 we have the cluster policy, official cluster policy, which was not renewed, but we elaborated a new one in 2019-2020 with of course with the Ministry for Regional Development and Technology. So this is kind of document. It's a document who assure generally the continuity of the policy, depending of the money. We do as well since 2010 every 2 years the benchmarking survey. We try to have contact with clusters. We want to know more what they do, and that's why we can more focus our state aid and European aid on the needs for clusters and on their potential to be more developed. Now we are still implementing the policy. We have one instrument for clusters. I will talk to you later, but I want to mention that we are participating in the caffeine project as well, but as a innovation agency which is cooperating and supporting the National Association of Polish Clusters and cooperating with other partners in this project. We starting again the new perspective, and we want to develop some cluster map to show more and to promote clusters as well. Can I ask for a next slide, please? Yeah. So our policy is defining three kinds of clusters in Poland. We have emerging clusters, growing clusters, and national key clusters. These are the division which is official, but sometimes we have some deviation, like we have supra-regional growing clusters, means clusters which are operating in more than one region. And as you can see, we try to have this stages of cluster just to have this concrete and effective approach to the cluster. So other thing, some support is needed by emerging clusters. Is different from national key clusters. But I wanted to tell you that these national key clusters are the best clusters in Poland. We have every 3 years, ministry is conducting the competition for choosing the best clusters. And on the national level, we are supporting especially these national key clusters to let them go abroad and be renew in the world. And we participate in supporting the supra-regional growing clusters, but we divided national policy from regional policy. This first stage of the cluster development, which you see on the slide, are in the policy in the hands of regions. We have 16 regions, but unfortunately not every region has a cluster policy as well. On the national level, we cooperate with national key clusters, as I mentioned, maybe 20. We have now 20 clusters of this kind. They have very good results, and they have many activities, including even social influence on ecosystem, including involvement in the transition, in the green and digital transition, and their activities are supporting our smart specialization strategy, national smart specialization strategy.
Okay, Monica, I have to move you along pretty soon.
Yeah,
if you
please,
can wrap it up.
And,
can you give a couple examples of what these clusters are? Oh, yeah, I think this is the list here, right? Okay.
No, it's not the list. It's the model of the policy. But
I see.
But for example, national construction cluster, which is the biggest cluster in Poland, 480 members of this cluster. It's the biggest one in Poland. But as well, we have this green chemistry cluster, Interizon, Nutribiomed, life science cluster. I don't want to forget, but it's really long list. But we have recycling cluster as well. Yeah, as you can see, there are the names. They are also the branches as well. So you can understand what kind of main activities, main scope of activity of this cluster are. So you can see on the slide this model for which we elaborated with ministry, with regions, and with clusters as well. So it is participating approach. And as you can see, we divided it to regional and national support and different areas which are expected from by clusters to be supported. Yeah. Now I can tell you that we have, there was a question about the instrument, concrete instrument. Now we have the instrument which is continuation in somehow the two instrument in less perspective. So we have the instrument which is aiming at strengthening the potential of the cluster coordinators and professionalizing their activities. We offer the investment money for development of the service, which should be connected to the smart specialization, which can be connected to the green or circular transition, to the long life learning, to the resilience possibilities. And this instrument is developing the services of the clusters. Now it's still under reconstruction because we had last year we had one call, and another one will be this year, and we are cooperating with clusters to change it a little. So that's I think the most important thing which I could say about national policy in Poland.
Okay, Monika, dziękuję bardzo. Thank you very much. Stay with us. Let's move to Pauline, back to Pauline, General Manager at the AFPC. Pauline, I think you have a joint action plan, is that right?
Yes, so in our caffeine project, we are building together a joint action plan. So this project, caffeine objective, is to prepare this joint action plan to address green and associated industrial transition challenge of SMEs and cluster. So it's also focused on transition and SMEs. So the heart of the project lies into an inclusive and collaborative approach ensured by the involvement of both national cluster associations. So we are 5 national cluster associations from France, Spain, Italy, Sweden, and Poland. But also, and it's very important, we have associated our national innovation funding agencies. That's why we are also working with Monika in this project, because we are really working with our funding agencies to develop concrete action and to build together this action plan. So we build this IFAB. It's the Innovation Funding Advisory Board. So we work together with the national agencies. We push some ideas, and then we exchange with this Innovation Funding Advisory Board to build together some proposals. During the first year of the project, we really made the state of the art, looking at each specificities of our countries. So Jean-Philippe already gave some inputs regarding pôle de compétitivité, which is a very specific policy in France, but each country has its own policy, and it's important to take advantage of good practices from each one to build this action plan. So now, in the second part of the project, we are currently working on the action, and we have 4 working groups regarding funding for SMEs, skills. So as you said, skills is a very important issue at European level. Yeah. Green industrial solutions, and scaling up innovation ecosystems and supports. So currently we are really working hard to push some idea and create this action plan. We will meet next time in Poland together and to have the first draft of this action plan. And we have the objective, and I think we will have the possibility to present this action plan during the cluster conference in Brussels. And it will be also the opportunity to share with other national cluster networks and to have interaction to see if our action can be well accepted in other countries or not. And the idea is really to open to other countries. So it will be the opportunity to attract and to let know about this project. So, well, of course, if some participants are interested, they can contact me. But we will also have this opportunity, I think, during a side event in Brussels. So.
Ah, good. Okay. Look forward to that. Merci beaucoup. Merci beaucoup, Pauline. Let's move to Thai. In Denmark, I understand you're working on a strategy for 2025 to upscale your efforts. Can you tell us about that?
Yes, and it's really the next phase of a process that started 6 years ago with a big reform of the whole business promotion scheme in Denmark, where we moved from regional specialization to national specialization. And we worked very closely with stakeholders to develop a new national cluster program, which is co-funded. It's really a joint venture between the Ministry of Higher Education and Science and the Danish Business Promotion Board, where we align national funding with regional development funding to create or support more, well, national super clusters, you might call them. Okay. At least we like to think of them like that. And so they've had funding for 4 years to develop SME support schemes in innovation, dual transition, all that sort of thing. And we have in Denmark 14 smart specialization areas, which are quite a lot, but we're also a very diversified economy. And what we want to do now with the new strategy is to really sort of continue this wide approach to specialization, but really consolidate the number of actors that receive public funding.
Okay.
And we're also trying to distinguish more between this sort of establishing a cluster and operating a cluster, and then differentiate that from funding for actual SME product development.
So taking it to the national level, how has that, what's a concrete result from that you think it makes it a stronger system?
Yeah, what we found in 2018 and 19, when we actually lined up the 5 or 6 regional development strategies and looked at what are the specialization areas. Well, almost every Danish region wanted to specialize in food and agriculture, because that's what Denmark does.
Yeah.
And I think 4 or 5 of them had maritime industry as well, also a Danish stronghold. So by merging those into a national strategy, we've been able to build cluster organizations that look across the wide scope of Danish knowledge institutions and Danish SMEs. We experienced before the reform that some SMEs would not be introduced to the right professor at the right university because that university was in a different region.
Okay.
But now, if you are a robotics company in the north of Jutland, you can have access to the robotics test center in Funen without having to move your whole company there. So I think that's really the strength of our new setup, that we sort of have a wider scope of collaboration that we can actually support.
It's almost like taking smart specialization to a national level, but in Denmark, I think that makes sense. Right?
Yes, because we're a very small economy.
Yeah, exactly. I have a number of questions coming in, and please do send in more of your questions. Let's see here. Yeah. Any indications, this is from Marianne, any indications of expected changes or continuity of support schemes after the European elections and hence the new commission? I don't know, I guess I wonder if there might be some reaction from the commission at this point, or?
Yes, Chris, let me respond to this.
Okay.
That's a very good question, but who knows what will be the results of the European Parliament elections? That's the first thing. But of course, we are already preparing things for the next financial perspective. And the thing that I can raise here, and something that you all might as well conclude from what Jan already put on the slide. There are two things actually which are very important for us, and this is very much related to the resilience of the economy and what clusters at EU level could do. And you could imagine, you can conclude itself that it's very important to continue and to building the meta clusters, building interregional, cross cluster collaboration. Our best example is always Silicon Europe, the ones on microelectronics, which we are always saying as a best example. There are Euro clusters, which we are going to launch new call at the end of this year, are meant to be kind of the kindergarten for building meta clusters at the EU level in specific fields. So this is one. Resilience, having clusters across EU working together. It is in line with the regional policy, interregional collaboration, interregional innovation investments. This is one. And the second one, something that maybe you didn't, it wasn't that explicit, but clusters have the capacity to attract investments. They're like investment hotspots, and using clusters to increase the investment in Europe in different areas where we need, particularly in critical inputs, or what is now more and more you see important to have security for the European Union. So these are the main issues: cross clustering,
Yeah.
at EU level, meta clusters, and clusters as investment hotspots. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you, Marek. Anyone else like to add to that? I like that investment hotspot idea. Any examples out there on a national level? If anybody would like to add that. But there's a question for Ty from, hang on a second, from Patricia. The Danish test centers mentioned, are they not open to all interested companies, or what is the specialty in Denmark now?
Yeah, I understand the question. Well, the point I was making was that yes, the test centers are open to all interested companies, but because before the reform 5 years ago, projects and funding schemes were designed at the regional level. So a company would not necessarily be able to get funding for approaching a test center outside its region. So this is what we've been trying to fix, so that the funding sort of answers the needs of the company and not the regional boundaries.
Okay, very good. I see. Oh, wait, hang on. There was a raised hand. Is there still a raised hand at this point? Yes, Zbynek Dvorak, please. Shall we let in Zbynek? I see he had a question as well. Is there the possibility to start new cooperation with some African country with a cluster with some history, or would it be better to establish some new cluster for this new type of cooperation, reduction of boron content in seawater with use for irrigation? That's Zbynek Dvorak of the Czech Republic. Zbynek, I guess, did you want to say anything else about that before somebody answers? He's connecting to audio. Yeah, Zbynek, are you there? All right. Would anyone like to answer about that? About a cluster that works with an African country? Anyone among the speakers? Okay. Well, think about that one. This is also to Ty. What have the first phase of the national, this is from Tor and Bellica. What have the first phase of the national supercluster development in Denmark made you learn, and how is this reflected in the next cluster program period from 2025?
Yeah, thank you. Well, we've learned lots of things. First off, we have started monitoring very systematically the quality of the services. So through a survey, now we can ask, because we collect data on all participating companies and knowledge institutions and other actors, we have very detailed data that we can use for a survey to ask companies, did you get anything out of participating in the cluster services?
Mm-hmm.
And the results so far are very, very promising. Between 70 and 80% of SMEs respond that they're very happy with the services provided and that the services match their needs. So we're very happy with that. And what else we've learned is that at the same time, there is, by moving to the national level, there's a limit on outreach geographically and to different sort of target groups. So we're working on that to sort of provide more flexible funding for the cluster organizations so that they can actually reach out to companies that are not already in the cluster and are not already active in innovation. What we found happily is that because the quality of service is so high, companies and knowledge institutions tend to return. So year after year, they will participate in the same cluster organizations, but with limited budgets. This means that new actors and new companies might be hard to find. And we're trying to scope the next program for funding so that we can support actually finding SMEs and explain to them what cluster services can mean for their business and how it can help their business grow and survive in an uncertain world.
Okay, great. Time has flown. I'm sorry to say we have to do a quick lightning round among all the speakers on looking ahead, how you see clusters developing in what you are doing. What is the future here? What's a next step maybe? John Hobbs, could you tell us?
So I think, I suppose, across Europe, you see some countries that really get it and really understand what's what is a cluster policy and how it's connected across government. So you take agencies like Axio, where they've built a collaborative team there that have been together for a number of years, that have built that sort of experience, that understand what's going on, understand the markets and the various different cluster managers. But I think a lot of countries across Europe can take inspiration from that and can see, how we can connect various different government policies. So we've talked about smart specialization this morning, and that can connect and support cluster policies along with educational and training policy as well, because there are skills needs, there's a lot of challenges there, and integrating and intertwining those supportive policies together under a larger sort of cluster policy can be transformative, I guess.
Okay, very good. Monika, Szybko, a quick word, please. How do you see the future?
From my Polish national view, we will cooperate more with clusters. We will try to make our support more good for clusters, reaching their expectations. We want to cooperate with EC, with the Commission on developing the cluster collaboration platform, which is a very good tool for clusters. Not everybody knows about it. It's everything there. It's plenty of information and support. We want to make our cluster more visible, so we will prepare the map of clusters in Poland, and we will do some benchmarking survey. So next year I can show you more what is going on in Polish clusters to show you what we are doing great, what we are doing in Poland and how much is great. Yeah.
Okay,
So,
great. And we hope to see you here in Brussels in May. Pauline, rapidement, caffeine, are you going to expand that to other countries?
Yeah, so, well, I think that to improve the cluster landscape at European level, to exchange to each other and build action together to harmonize our practices can be a real good opportunity, because we are quite different, and to think together to develop some common criteria to improve could be a really nice action.
Okay, very good. And Ty, a quick word then. You talked within Denmark, but I'm sure you're connecting with other countries as well.
Definitely. And I think that's really the next big step for our cluster organizations, that now they've consolidated nationally, they've built their national networks, and now it's time to look abroad, and a lot of them are already doing it. And I think there's some best practice there that we can spread throughout the cluster landscape in Denmark.
Excellent. Great. Ty, thank you so much. Yes, let's wrap this up on the panel side. John, Monica, Pauline, Ty, thank you so much. And let us move on to the funding opportunities, which we'll also hear more of during the May event. Nina Hoppmann, back to you.
Thank you, and many thanks to the panelists. Very interesting what you have been telling us about what is happening in the projects in your countries. And there were some questions on European funding as well, and by these are not calls specifically for clusters, that would still be interesting. It's a call called experimentation exchange of good practices for value creation. So coming from the premise that Europe needs to translate available scientific knowledge and research to innovative solutions. I mean, innovation was one of the top keywords in the word cloud we saw. And results are expected to contribute to value creation and transfer to the economy and society by interlinking and cooperating between knowledge valorization actors, which includes the SMEs and industry, to create new solutions to societal and economic challenges and improvements to structure, strategies, practices, and skills for knowledge valorization. The deadline is the 12th of March. It's a Horizon CSA action. The topic ID here in the screen and the link in the chat. The Alliances for Education Enterprises is an open call. Well, they're looking for transnational structured and result-driven projects to foster innovation, new skills, a sense of initiative and entrepreneurial mindset. So the projects should bring together enterprises and higher education and vocational training providers to work together in partnership and to establish a set of sectoral or cross-sectoral activities for future knowledge developments in the EU and to boost talent and skills development. It's an Erasmus lump sum grant with the topic ID that you see here on the screen and the link in the chat. And Mike also talked about interregional collaboration. The I3 capacity building strand 2B might be interesting for you. You're looking into that. The call aims to test new approaches for increasing the capacity of regional innovation ecosystems in less developed regions to collaborate in EU value chains, and projects are expected to deliver a pipeline of potential interregional investments as well as business and investment plans. And the next deadline for this call is the 14th of November under the funding and tenders portal with the link in the chat. You find all the information on this call. And last but not least, of course, the reminder that there are concrete opportunities as well for SMEs by the calls from the Euro cluster. So this joint cluster initiatives that cover a wide array of industrial ecosystems and offer different funding opportunities excuse me, for innovation, for the transfer of knowledge or technologies, for skills, or for internationalization, and they give very specific support for SMEs. There are many Eurocluster calls open. You see here on the screen the ones that you can go back to when you go back to the slides and the recording, and you find all the open calls on the CCP website. So go to clustercollaboration.eu/open-calls to see whether there are concrete opportunities for your SMEs in the networks. Many thanks, and back to you.
Thank you, Nina. Look at all those funding hotspots, as Marek was mentioning. That's worth sending out on a hashtag EU Clusters Talks. Please do social network with that hashtag, and also, of course, register for the next talks. The next one coming up on the 6th of March, Net Zero Industry Act, and so on. We also have a LinkedIn discussion group to as you saw in the chat, a lot of people putting out their LinkedIn connections. This is where the discussion can continue online for those who are interested in finding out more information. So that's a really great new addition to the clusters talks, clusters networking. And of course, this is recorded for playback, and the slides are available in the cluster collaboration platform. So great to be with us. And we will continue networking on the LinkedIn discussion group. Keep in mind those, as you can see, the online links there. And my name is Chris Burns. Speak to you next time. Thanks.